Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm speaking in English because I'm being translated in French online. Alors, je parle anglais parce que je suis normalement traduite en français. Est-ce qu'il y en a qui ne comprennent pas du tout l'anglais dans la salle? Okay. So, welcome everyone. And so we have a special evening tonight. We have had a beautiful time over the last 2 weeks with the COP happening in Montreal. And with that, a beautiful team, the green team that some of you might already know, came to Montreal, participated. Thank you. Much lighter. And so we have the joy to have those yogis with us. And we've had a few programs and it was beautiful. And we thought, why not having just Sister Maureen being interviewed by Eric? So that will be coming to later. And after that, we will also have a very special meditation because once a month, all the Brahma Kumari Center have what we call the World Meditation Hour. And this is happening actually throughout the world. And so it will be a very beautiful moment to spread our vibrations together. And we thought to open up the evening and to create a beautiful atmosphere. We thought of offering you a special gift. And so that gift will be a choreography by Sébastien. And so Sébastien is specialized in what we call Chindai. So this is a choreographic art derived from martial arts. And so you will be able to feel lots of peace through that. And Sébastien has this art of conveying, expressing dance movement and feel really a beautiful aspect of non-violence to that. So it's very, very beautiful. And then the interview will follow. Have a beautiful, very beautiful evening. Sébastien, you're welcome. Many thanks, Sebastian. It was such a beautiful moment. And so now we will have the pleasure to listen to Sister Maureen being interviewed by Eric. Enjoy.
Welcome and nice to be with all of you. My name is Eric. Happy to be in your presence. Thank you, Sebastian. I felt we were your body at one time and we end up being your soul. And I felt that in the dance there was such a presence, such a intensity. I was surprised to see myself feeling every movement. It was absolutely beautiful and very peaceful. I was about to start being a little bit funny and joyful. Now I feel so quiet. Maybe better. I might be even wiser. Who knows? So thank you and welcome each and everyone. Such a beautiful space to be in together. Also welcome those who are joining us online now or who will be joining us in the future. We are beyond time these days with those online events. And so we are very, very happy to welcome Sister Maureen. And I'll try to be mindful that this is being translated in French. So I have to make an effort to speak slowly for our dear translator. And it's such a beautiful moment, I think, we're experiencing in Montreal. Your presence, many of the green team, we call them the green team, some of your friends and our friends who have been coming for this beautiful conference, COP15. And so not only the minds of the world are together, I think really from the heart, trying to make a difference. And I think many of us, if not all of us, have been very moved, I think, this week, the past 2 weeks, in reflecting more about our relationship with nature in many ways. And it starts by sometimes just drinking water and appreciating more, or walking in the snow, which we did today. Today was the team's day off in a way, a little bit. So we could enjoy this beautiful scenery as if it was, specially designed just for us. And so for the past 2 weeks, the Brahma Kumaris were represented at the COP15, like many organizations. Many came from over 190 some countries in the world. Some 18,000 delegates were there. Ordinary people like us, we couldn't go in, but special people were in. Maureen was one of them. So we want to know, what happened? What were you doing? What happened for the past 2 weeks? Are you seriously meeting, or did you go enjoy old Montreal or have coffees here and there?
Have to let out all the secrets.
But seriously, we're curious to know the insider's point of view. What have been your reality for the past 2 weeks, just on the very general activity? What did you do? What happened?
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming myself and the team here. And actually, I've been here for this week, for 1 week of the 2 weeks. And first, I'd like to say that it's been such a pleasure to be here in Montreal. I really didn't know what to expect, and it's such a beautiful city. And our walk this morning on Mount Royal, was just spectacular, actually, with the snow. And we had a snowball fight, but we won't go on about that.
No winners, no losers.
That's
Only
right.
Players.
That's it. Not like football, anyway. Thank you so much. Yes, it was interesting. For me, it was a very interesting education. I had been also in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27, and that was quite intense, really, compared with this. There were 40,000 people there, and not so easy to find your way around. And here, things were all in one place, one venue. And we are what is known as a faith-based organization. And whereas in the COP conferences, the climate change conferences, it's only been, it's a very gradual process for the governments or the UNFCCC, it means the UN panels, to become aware of the importance of the input of faith-based organizations. Here, we actually, the faith-based organizations are actually given a space, a pavilion, along with several other constituencies, such as for women, Indigenous, and so on. And so it was great to have a place like that where the faith-based organizations could be visible, and we could be there to organize different events there. And also, I think one thing that was quite significant was that every day at 1:15, there was a pause for peace, a moment of peace for half an hour, and different faiths took that up. Because what I understand, of course, people up to now, and I'm not an expert in this by any means, but this is my understanding, that all the targets over the last 10 years that have been created in order to prevent the loss of biodiversity, just about none of those have been met. And so this new framework that the governments have been negotiating on, they're calling it the framework post-2020. So it's like a fresh start, a new framework, because the past framework just didn't achieve anything. And there's a lot of detailed negotiation going on from the countries. But our perspective of the Brahma Kumaris is that it's very much about, as you mentioned, our relationship with the earth. It's actually, I was also looking at reading something about the importance of the input of Indigenous people, and of course, here in Canada, but all over the world. And something that was written that, and actually they were stating this, that where land is being looked after by Indigenous people, there's actually more conservation of species, of the land, of the soil. But it's not just about useful understanding of how to work with the land, but it's about a whole world view. And I think from a spiritual perspective, it's also like a different world view, that it's not, yes, the earth has its ecosystems that work very beautifully in harmony, but then human consciousness, human beings, the consciousness that we have, our thoughts, our feelings, our awareness, it has an impact on the ecosystem. And unfortunately, it's not been a very positive impact. And so we came with this concept of ecosynthesis, that the ecosystem has to include the concept of human consciousness as well, and also further the importance of divine consciousness too, the divine energy and the impact on the ecosystem. And in particular, you can see that because there's a lot of violence in human consciousness at the moment on many levels. And, you know, one is to think of violence in terms of anger or hatred, but also fear. You know, there's a lot of fear in the world on so many levels. That's also a violence. And all of this is having an impact on nature. And so the transformation in human consciousness is very, very important. And so this was the message that we were bringing, actually, of this holistic view, that it's not just the ecosystems in terms of nature itself. And, you know, as has often been said, if we were not here, nature would get on very well. But there's this other dimension. But we are also part of nature, because nature has a life force. We have a consciousness. And so we really, we used to live in that very symbiotic way with nature, with respect, with total regard. And there was a state of harmony between humanity and the earth and the creatures. But of course, we've gone far away from that. So we need to bring ourselves back to that point.
For many of us who are outside, you know, of the negotiations, conversations, sharings, some are hopeful, I think, and some are skeptical. And many are skeptical because exactly they saw that last time there was a hooray. It didn't go any further than the hooray, and nothing happened. And the hopeful feels that we should never give up hope. Where do you stand between?
It's interesting. Some are pessimistic as well, not just skeptical. Christiana Figueres was the executive general, I can't remember the exact position. Thank you, executive secretary of the climate change panel when the Paris Agreement was made. And we've got to know her quite well. And she's a very spiritual person, actually. And she talks about stubborn optimism. And I like that very much. But I think that I do feel there's hope. I'm not hopeless. I don't know how much hope there is in the convention and the negotiations, if I'm honest. And we sat in some of the negotiations, and of course they're arguing over every little word, every little paragraph, you know, that, and you can see that the governments don't want to tie themselves down too much. They want to leave the definitions fairly broad so that they can interpret it in their own way. I think that's, you know, generally. And so, of course, that means that then the agreements get quite diluted. And we have, I mean, already now there's, you know, 1 million species at the moment, threat of loss. I can't quote all the statistics, but just to give you an idea of the imbalance, it was the statistic of biomass of mammals, and of mammals that we eat, or for dairy, or for you know, consumption. That's like 60-something%. And then what's the third one? I know there's wild animals, but what's the third one? Oh, human beings. Forgetting about human beings. So like, you know, 40% or something. Wild animals, just 4%. So how much, you know, we've taken the whole, you know, ecosystems have gone completely out of balance. But where I do feel hope is that I've seen, yes, my own experience, but in working with others, and I do feel there's hope for governments too, that when there's an understanding of what's happening, and when the conscience awakens, then it's like there has to be change. I can't keep denying my conscience. I have to move forward in a certain way. Like, I know I've made certain changes in lifestyle because I've understood of the ethics of it, the benefit health-wise, things like, you know, not having dairy. Of course, in the Brahma Kumaris, we're vegetarian anyway. But there are things that you do when you realize what it's doing to the planet. you want to change. And I do feel that there has to come a point where, and it might take time, but it's finding those individuals who are in the negotiations who really start to awaken and start to move things in a different direction. But I think even before that, just we as a community, a human family, when we begin to change our way of looking at the world and our way of life, or our habits from the very consumeristic, materialistic model to a more holistic one, I think that's the biggest hope for change, actually.
It's interesting because I was exactly going to explore with you, we are very active on a spiritual level. We want to be better people. We meditate. We eat peacefully. We don't yell anymore at each other. So
not very often. No.
Not very often. Very good. We're making big progress. And the question when you were talking earlier about bringing, in the whole holistic view, the notion of consciousness and the reality for many world leaders, ministers, business people, they take everything down usually to how much, and let's negotiate with how much money.
Yeah.
So I don't know the price of our consciousness, but I don't know if it would be more expensive than, saving certain areas, rivers. But did you find there was some opening from unexpected people to hear the message about the importance of bringing the consciousness in the equation? Do you find there's opening, or are they saying, hey, we're just negotiating money right now? So consciousness is like, what?
Not quite. I don't think there's that much opening yet, if I'm honest. And we didn't really get to talk to world leaders as such, of course. But there was a session that was about biodiversity and COP28, which is going to happen in Dubai. And I did make an intervention there in that small session. And I focused it more. I thought consciousness may be a step too far, I'm not sure, but I focused it on well-being of negotiators who are under tremendous stress, well-being of our community, well-being of the planet. And, the people who were chairing were nodding away. Juan, my colleague, was there. And I think this is a dimension that people can relate to, because people do feel under it. It's very, very stressful in those negotiations. And it's really an art, because I only sat in a couple of them where you could hear the country representatives arguing over not arguing, but, debating over these paragraphs. And the people who are chairing have to be so skillful to say, oh no, come on, to a certain country, you're the only one left that's not agreeing to this. What about this? So-and-so said this. It's like as if they have to keep the whole thing in their heads. I was quite admired their skill at doing this, and keeping a good atmosphere actually in the room. But I think that's a dimension where there could be more of an opening. And I did then mention about, and we also asked at COP27 too with the Dubai representatives, the possibility of having a space for faith-based organizations, a space for well-being. And I think it's crucial actually in the COP. And it's not just about having the space and then doing things in that space, but where there's a different atmosphere in the space, it has an influence on the rest of the atmosphere. I don't think we can underestimate the influence of atmosphere. So I hope, that may be a way forward in terms of governments recognizing that a shift in consciousness is the primary thing that's needed. Perhaps the road is a bit of a journey yet, if I'm, putting it that way. I hope my colleagues will agree with the things I'm saying, but that's how I understand it.
I think that's where we measure the impact of intensity of hope versus intensity of despair or hopelessness. And I think hope could carry a greater impact in convincing others. Because if I come from a depressing point of view, angry with the whole world, and negative myself in my own attitude, I'm not sure my message will have as much impact on the world leaders or anyone. So I think the one who is sending the message, his consciousness also needs to be clear. Because we've seen in the past, wars to attain peace, and they never work.
Doesn't work.
And if you fight for something with anger, we know sometimes it brings something, but on the long term. So my question to you on a very personal level, you've been listening, sharing for more than a week. It's a very special conference, COP15. On a very personal level, with your own spiritual journey, was there anything that really touched you deeply, that you felt for you personally that it might change? I don't know what's on your plate that's already been quite selected already. You've made big changes, so maybe on that level. But did you find there was some more impact on you personally that you feel, wow, okay, I didn't know about this, or this increases my awareness even more on certain aspects?
Well, I think if you're talking about diet, I'm quite sort of,
You're organized.
I'm quite focused on that.
I've seen what's on the plate. It's very well taken care of. Next.
No, but I think one thing that I became more aware of is the importance of Indigenous people and the contribution that the First Nations make. And I'd begun to understand this a few years back when I'd actually been chairing a panel in another forum, and there was an Indigenous elder. And he spoke about, and then you're speaking about valuing things, monetary value. He spoke about this thing of the point of departure. And he said that originally we had an Indigenous worldview, means all over the world. In other words, we lived in harmony with nature. And so there was abundance for everyone. And he said the point of departure from the Indigenous worldview to the dominant worldview came when agriculture started. And so the land became a commodity at that point. And so from then on, it's continued into the extreme that we see now. And the other thing that did touch me, just going back to the Indigenous for a moment. And so understanding, and people saying this from the platform, that where Indigenous people look after land, it's actually conserved better, like which was, it was the moose, I think, that they were talking about. I know my colleague Annetta is fond of that animal.
She's the moose expert.
Something like that. No, but they were saying that in Indigenous lands, they don't, I'm not sure which part, but they don't need to count them anymore, because when they saw that the population of that animal was lessening, they stopped hunting it. So it's like a natural understanding. I mean, I prefer not to hunt and eat meat, but that's another issue. But it's the principle of understanding how to keep the balance and the conservation. And I think there's so much to learn, so much to learn. And then you've got the other extreme where, now again, I haven't got all the right language, but the, part where thinking that the solution to saving biodiversity is more manipulation of the natural environment, of genetics and so on. Help me, am I going in the right direction? And that's like another extreme, because once you identify the genomes and everything, then big business wants to patent it and control it. And, this is life, so unless these things, so on the one extreme you have that, and the other extreme you have the Indigenous wisdom. And so these things I hadn't understood so clearly before, and I'm still very much learning about it. So this really made me think. It really made me think about technology a lot more, and how damaging it can be used in the wrong way, and also how can you can't put a price on the gene, on life, you can't put a price on consciousness. The Brahma Kumaris here, we offer all our courses and activities for free. And sometimes someone asked me, how do you do it for free? I said, well, actually, if we charge for it, you could never afford it because it's invaluable. So, you can't put a price on these things. And so to try and value life in monetary terms is just completely contrary to the whole spirit of life itself.
Yeah, I can relate practically, and because of being in this context of the COP15 at the moment and hearing about biodiversity. The other day I was squeezing nice fresh oranges to make an orange juice for a guest. And I said, how convenient it is, there are no seeds in that orange. So you press it and then after a moment you say, but this is not normal. What did they do with the seed of the orange? Anything?
And where did the orange come from, and how far did it fly?
Yeah.
And
it's not raised in the snow. They were not frozen. But those little things, make us think of how we've gone so far away, eating oranges that don't have seed because some people think that an orange with seed is annoying when you squeeze it.
Or, now this next thing is producing artificial meat. So, you can't change your lifestyle, so replace it. I mean, don't have to say anymore. It really doesn't make sense.
One thing, I know there's so many areas, but when you mention about, I'm coming back to, I think, what is the essence of what we hope to offer, from a spiritual point of view. And how would you describe more the impact of consciousness on nature? If we want to make it really an element, you talked about this beautiful word, ecosynthesis. Mm-hmm. And maybe some are not familiar with it, or are we generating a new energy mentally that can help nature?
Yeah, it was a term I wasn't familiar with either, but it's really this whole holistic view, but very much understanding that consciousness and matter, consciousness and climate, consciousness and biodiversity, very much intertwined. And it's like the confluence of two living systems. There's the living system of the earth and life, and the living system of consciousness, or living system of thought. And one does affect the other. There are two levels. One is that with a particular worldview, a monetary worldview, then when I take decisions, and we see this with governments, decisions are taken through the lens of finance. And that's about it, actually. They're not taken through the lens of well-being of people or the flourishing of nature. So one is seeing things in a certain way, my values, my attitude, values, and then the decision-making. And I'm not going to make decisions that are going to help nature flourish in the longer term. But also there's a direct impact in the sense, I mean, even if you think very personally, if you're feeling a little bit down one day, probably you never do, but you know how it is. No, but even you don't have as much energy, even your body reflects that. This is the matter that's closest to us, right? So, you don't feel you have as much energy. If there's too much stress, that's why people get sick, etc. That's well known, this psychosomatic connection. But then take it a little bit further, and it's definitely going to impact the elements of nature. It's going to impact the creatures. It's, all of life. because it's a web of life and we're all intertwined. We can't say that somehow it can stay separate. And so there is a very direct impact. And it sometimes really feels as if nature is like, I can't say angry, I wouldn't use that word, but like rebelling against all the negativity or negative vibrations and atmosphere that we're putting into it. And also the fact that we just want to take and we don't think about giving. And this was, many of you have heard about Daddy Janki, who left us now nearly 3 years ago, at the age of 104, one of our, she was so amazing. But she would say, people would tell her that, yes, I enjoyed being in the, with the trees and and she'd say, very nice, okay. But you were taking from nature, but what did you give to nature? And so that's another whole mindset, to consciously think about giving out pure vibrations for the healing of the planet. Because really, look at the world, the crises we're in on every level. And it's a world of trauma, and nature's in trauma. And so we need to begin to think and be in such a way that can begin to create healing, bring about healing on every level. And one person who I know very well, who was, thought a lot about this, and he said, the question is not so much what shall I do, but the question is, how shall I be? And that's answered your question to some extent.
I think there are two things for me also. One is the awareness of cause and effect having an impact on my responsibility and accountability. And I think when a person realizes, for example, in a relationship, that being angry and violent is hurting the relationship, and maybe it's going to make me be separated from that relationship, as a person may be violent and will lose access to the children, the relationship will be broken. They realize there's a cause and effect. Mm-hmm. And they may feel there's a need for change. And I'm sometimes wondering if, even for us on a spiritual level, if we really feel the cause and effect between me and nature, because, I can eat and drink and abuse nature without feeling direct impact in my life. I hear it on the news, or global warming, but it seems so, it doesn't have a cause and effect which is immediate. And the only ones it seems to me that are more aware than us is those that are, and I know we both are very youthful in many ways when we play with snowballs, but the fact is we have more gray hairs than some of others in the room. And it feels to me that the younger generation is, for other reasons, are more aware, they're more passionate and more active. And this cause and effect, do you think there's maybe an element of reflection here where we don't measure how much the consciousness impact really nature in general, and that's why we don't pay attention as much, So what should we do to create more awareness? Call the youth in and ask them to tell us what's happening?
I do agree that young people are much, much more aware. We are catching up, really. But also, it's very difficult. Now there's this, everything has to be a syndrome, doesn't it? But this whole thing of climate anxiety, and that's very real, especially amongst younger people, because it is difficult to see a future with the way things are. But I think that I know for myself that it's like a constant refining, in a sense, or heightening of that awareness and a practice until that practice becomes more natural. What does nature need from us? What does humanity need from us? Peace, love. In fact, I was quoting today, there was a French astronaut, and when he saw the Earth from space, he said, the Earth doesn't need to be saved. She just needs to be loved. And there's a lot in that. Mm-hmm. Saving is like a condescension. Loved, my family. So this is what the Earth needs. The Earth needs wisdom. And so these actually are the innate qualities of the human soul. And when we've got influenced by the materialism around us, it's like those qualities have got buried very deeply. And what meditation does, in Raj Yoga meditation, it awakens those qualities within. So the more peace and love becomes part of your nature, but not, a limited love that's, an unconditional love, not a peace that's there sometimes and not at other times. It's this inherent deep peace and love that is actually who we really are. We have innate wisdom. Every human being has it. Every soul, because we're souls having a human experience at this point. And so when we awaken those qualities and it becomes more and more natural for us to live with those qualities, then we are very naturally creating a different atmosphere, which is serving people around us, which is serving nature itself. And the more that you do that, the more you feel that hope. And I think this is what we really need to pay attention to, because we were talking about this, was it just last night when we left? It was just last night, wasn't it? When we left just before leaving the conference, how do you respond to injustice, which is huge. Can I respond with love? And whatever action it doesn't mean that I love everyone. Yes, of course, but you do have to act, you do have to say things. But can that activism become a sacred activism from the space of love, empowered by love, empowered by peace, not by anger? So there's still a passion to act, but it's not an aggressive one. So I think this is what we need to develop more and more deeply, because whatever we do, the deep intention behind it has an impact. That's where the consequence comes. So if that deep intention is one of love, then the impact is going to be much greater than if we do the same act, but the intention behind it is frustration or anger. So I feel that's something we really need to pay attention to in the self. I'm
glad we are moving that way, because for the last few minutes I was thinking...
10 to 8. Yes.
It just flies, right?
Yes.
But I was thinking that the last vision could be really towards the future. And we talk about, seeing a beautiful future or nurturing some kind of future that, of course, would be better. For some, they don't see it. They can't imagine how we're going to fix it. But for me, I always found there was a beautiful connection between our inner nature and the nature that we live in. And I'm wondering if you see also the future being really in our hands of our own nature, inner nature driven by consciousness, of course. And you mentioned that we need to bring higher consciousness, but also divine consciousness. And one day I remember being in the Rocky Mountains in Alberta and seeing how amazing the scenery was. And I was watching the mountains, the trees, the river, and everything. And I thought, if God had a living room, I think he would decorate it like that. And I was really feeling as if God's taste was nature in its perfect form. And if you look at nature, you can never say, well, this tree will be better a little bit on the left. That mountain, I will put it, I rearrange everything around usually, but not nature.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if our own inner nature is also, the most hopeful sign for the future, because that's in our hands.
Yes, absolutely. Because you can't control anybody else, but you can do something for yourself.
You can try to control yourself.
No, you can try to control yourself, but it's not so much control, it's realization and understanding. And so when we understand more about who we really are, then we begin to live that. And in living that, it brings us a lot of, it's like there's an alignment then in our consciousness. And when we connect to God, to the divine, then it really is, it's a bit like plugging into, a big powerhouse, and everything's available to recharge your consciousness. So you have unlimited love available to you, unlimited peace, joy, wisdom, all those things are available. You plug in and there's that flow of energy. And, I was mentioning healing before, and really the thing that can heal is God's love, actually. I don't think there's anything else that can really heal the earth and all of us completely. And it's, and God isn't responsible for this situation. I remember being asked this, it was in the context of Ukraine, and the journalist asking me, so where is God in all this? Why is this allowed to happen? I said, it's a good question, but where is humanity in this? How have we come to this point? And so if we can connect with God and align ourselves with that most elevated consciousness, highest consciousness, then there's a very big chance of a very profound transformation in us, and then a profound transformation in everything around us. So I think probably the biggest key is that, actually, when it comes down to it.
Thank you. I feel that you've been sharing a lot of wisdom and kind thoughts, to make us more united with nature. After throwing a few snowballs at you this morning with lots of love.
And you got one or two back. So.
There's a few that was interesting. And she did send them back with love. I feel this is a very nice way of throwing thoughts, at each other as well. And as we know, we have many ways of sharing. Sometimes words are very powerful. Energy, vibrations. So we're going to have a beautiful meditation together. And this is also today what we call here the Brahma Kumari's World Meditation Hour. And we're going to invite you to be very, very much part of that meditation with a specific approach, which involves keeping your eyes open. And we know it's not a normal, ordinary style of meditation, but there's a reason for that. And I'm going to ask Maureen to briefly share about keeping the eyes open during meditation and looking at each other, why we do that. And after you can explain that and maybe a word on World Meditation Hour, you'll take us into a beautiful commentary, and we'll meditate until 8:20-ish. So we can enjoy uniting with the world, So thank you again, Maureen, and I'll let you explain about our way of staring at each other during meditation.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so as you said, World Meditation Hour, it happens on the third Sunday of every month and at all of our centers. So it really is a tuning in. It's a wave across the world of meditation for the earth, for the world. and with the awareness that this is a transformational power. And I will share a commentary so that we can feel connected to ourselves and to God and share those vibrations. And yes, about the open-eyed meditation. Okay, we have some music as
you're
well.
You're not used to it, but this is a very traditional Christmas carol. This is how we do in Christmas.
This isn't the snow plow.
They are telling people to move the car so they can remove the snow.
I see.
And so they put signs, but when people don't know there's a sign and they're sleeping, they're really awake with this. And they suspect there must be something going on. So whoever is parked, and by the way, if somebody's parked,
yes, your car's going to get swept up.
You need to move your car, otherwise your car will be gone with the snow. Which is a nice title for a song, but not for,
Okay, so getting back to the distraction. Yes, so our main understanding is that we're all spiritual beings. We're souls, beings of light, and our original nature is peace, is love, is joy, that inner wisdom too. And our natural relationship is with the divine. And in meditation, when we experience this, we don't just want to experience this for those 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour, but we would really like it to be something that's natural, that we can, a consciousness that we can keep through our activity. And it really makes life flow very beautifully. And so that's why we do practice with the eyes open, so that even when there's stimuli and there's, distraction, what could be distraction, you're able to keep your consciousness, your thoughts focused, so that you're not just, your thoughts are not then generated by the influences around you. Your thoughts are generated from the inside, from the inner influence. But I would say, you don't need to stare. You can be relaxed, you can blink, you can, it's a natural thing. And if we are both going to be sitting here for the meditation, and so if there's an experienced meditator and you have that connection, then you can become an instrument to help share those divine vibrations. And so that's why we would look at each one, particularly here in the center of the forehead, at the seat of the soul, just to share those good vibrations with you. And you can look here, there, here, but only if you feel comfortable, of course. And if you want to close your eyes, that's absolutely fine too. And some people like to meditate with their eyes closed. Some people have a very good meditation with their eyes closed. It does help you to stay alert as well, actually. It's the other benefit. But be comfortable, but just so that you understand how we do it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just share a few thoughts to take us into the meditation. So be comfortable with your feet on the floor. Take in a deep breath. Relax the body as you breathe out. And prepare for your inner journey. Gently, I take my thoughts away from all the distractions. Away from thoughts of the past or the future. To be present here with myself. So I ask the question, who am I? I'm more than my physical appearance. I'm more than all my relationships and the roles I play. They're constantly changing. That my real identity is constant, unchanging. I am a spiritual being of light. And the focus for that light is in the center of my forehead. I visualize a point of light shining in the center of my forehead. This is the light of the sun. As I focus on that light, gradually, other awareness fades away. And I become the light. I experience my original nature of peace. I am a being of peace. I enjoy the stillness inside. Of that constant peace. I am being of love. Love is my natural nature. a love that is giving. And in this awareness, in this inner silence, take my consciousness beyond. To a place of silence, a world of silence, world of light. And I sense the presence, greater being of the divine. Being of light. Point of light, yet unlimited. I come close to that being, into the aura of that being. I enter the unlimited peace of God. I dive into the unlimited ocean of love. I enjoy deep happiness of this connection. Waves of love bring healing, bring strength. I'm filled with the energy of God's love. There's nothing more that I need. I allow the love and the peace to flow out into the universe, into our world. God's love embraces the world, bringing comfort, awakening human hearts, touching every part of nature. as this energy of love, divine love, reaches out there's the possibility of a profound transformation. In every aspect of life. I remain in this love. Giving light and love to my human family, and the whole of my planet.
So we're hardly there to interrupt this beautiful and deep silence. Everyone enjoyed their meditation. It's special, huh? Thank you so much to both of you, and special thanks for sharing all those jewels of wisdoms. I think everyone enjoyed having a clear picture of the cup and everything connected with it, and especially the spirituality that we can actually encourage inside ourselves when we understand a little bit more what's going on. So we will close our evening with our traditional Toli and blessings, and so you can do this message that you will receive as a special message from God on your journey. So enjoy very much, and someone will give the blessings. Valériane. Voilà. So thank you so much for coming here, and stay tuned. We will send some news this week, but there will be a final meditation before the end of the year. I think it will be on the 31st of December. So if you want to have a really explosive, wonderful evening to end up the year and start a new one, you are more than welcome to join. Om Shanti. See you very soon.